Born Again and Again is the book that follows both my personal journey of shifting faith and thinking through different ways of holding my Christian beliefs, and also looks at our history in the United States to say, why is it that particularly white Christians believe this or hold their beliefs in this way? In the book, I look at my story and history and what the Bible has to say, and I invite the reader to consider and reconsider not only what they believe, but why, and why they're holding on to it in that way. I'm really hoping that this book is invitational, that it makes people feel like they aren't alone, and also that it provides kind of like footholds or handholds, like if you were a rock climber, something to hold on to when it feels like maybe your faith is falling apart. Not something to hold on to like, oh, and now you've got all the answers if you got it figured out, but that you have a grasp on something just enough to pull you to that next step. Something to steady yourself when it seems like things are crumbling. That is kind of the space I want people to find, or I hope that they find in the pages. A major theme in the book is connection over consumption, and I hope that even as people are reading, that they find that sense of connection. It's really important to me that I was able to include different contributions from friends and people who've been formative in my faith throughout the course of my life, because I only know what I can experience. I only know things about how God interacts with humanity and in the world through my own place of being, right? Through the place that I stand. And so I'm grateful that there have been people who have come alongside me throughout my life and imaged God to me, right? That if we say every single person bears the image of God, then the more people that we know and we talk to and we listen to and we trust, then the greater we understand the vastness and the scope of the divine. And so I'm honored that I was able to include different contributions from friends throughout the course of my life in the ways that they too are unlearning narratives that may not be as true or as good or as representative of what God is doing in the world, and then returning to this kind of conformity to Christ. So I'm really excited for readers to engage not just with my voice, but with the voices of my friends. I think that this book relates to the Bible in part because I talk about the Bible in every chapter, because I am a little bit of a Bible nerd. And while I am a nerd, this book is definitely geared for normal people. I think it'll appeal to nerds too, but it's definitely written for the normal people. But I talk about the Bible in every chapter because I am a nerd. And I think that one of the things that hangs up so many people who, particularly those of us who have come out of evangelical traditions, is we get so hung up on, but what does the Bible say? What does the Bible say about that? I heard that the Bible said this about something, and are you sure that I can let go of this belief or shift the way I think about it? Because what does the Bible really say? So with every chapter, I kind of take the reader through not just my story and not just the history, but then also some of what the Bible has to say. And I'm a little bit tongue-in-cheek about it. The Bible clearly says, even though I don't think the Bible clearly says a whole lot of anything, I think that misses the point on what the Bible is doing. So in every chapter, people will find my voice, they'll find some history, they'll find what the Bible has to say, they'll find the voices of some of my friends bearing witness and offering ways of understanding God and the world from their own respective places, as people who have committed acts of civil disobedience, and people who are single, and people who have lived through different walks of life as far as ethnicity and culture and race go, people who have different expressions of sexuality or gender identity. Because we need all these voices, and we need to be connecting with one another within the body of Christ to begin to understand that God is so much more than just what white men have to say about God. And so I'm super excited for readers to encounter all of these things. The story behind this book is really that I deconstructed, and I'm using air quotes, I deconstructed or reevaluated my beliefs for a good solid 10 years before I even sat down to try to write this. And so what I've tried to give the reader is like a time capsule of sorts, like an encapsulation of the questions I was asking, the things I was grappling through, and kind of the places I started to look to try to get my bearings. Again, it's kind of like giving people who are climbing on rocks a foothold or a place to stand, to launch off into the next thing. It's a book that was birthed out of a place of me realizing that my faith was too small and too cramped for the person that God was calling me to be. It's a book that was born out of a space of me saying, well, yes, but if I'm supposed to love my neighbor, then doesn't that include this person too? It's a book that is born out of a lot of spaces that felt so hard and so scary at the time, and looking back have led me into such beautiful and liberating spaces. And so I sat down to try to work backwards almost and chronicle that journey to say, how did I get from point A to point, maybe not even point B, but just a different path altogether? I sat down, and it was a little bit scary to try to write all those things down, to try to look back and pull through back from years ago into the present. This is how I wrestled through these things. But I think especially in these moments, there are so many people who are wrestling for the first time, or who are wrestling in more significant ways than maybe in prior seasons of their faith or in their life. And so it felt like good, worthwhile work to do. To say that if you're grappling with your faith and it feels too small, it feels too cramped, or you're noticing more and more inconsistencies, that those are questions that are welcome. And they're things that you're asking, and you're not alone in that. That there's so many people who have been grappling through those things as well. And here's my story of that. Here's the history of different people who have done that. Here are the people who have been alongside me on the journey and have shaped and formed me. And you can add your story and your voice to the mix as well. Because at the end of the day, we are a body. And the connection that we have with God and our neighbor and ourselves is what it's all about. We've spent so much time treating faith or religion like some sort of consumer good, something that enhances our lives or, gives us some sort of social standing. I think that misses the mark. I think it's all about connection, not consumption, which means we're going to have to figure out ways of living into this reality and into our faith that are different than the ways we've known before.